G'day traders, we're going to wrap up of Thursday the 19th of July. Here we are on the daily chart. We're approaching this, I've just added this line in here, this significant support resistance area. You can see through here it's acted as support and resistance. When you see a line really hold the market from the upside and the downside, it makes it a lot more relevant. So this is certainly a significant area in the market. Of course, just not long ago we came up and bounced off it. We're approaching again today. So this sort of day, it's really handy to watch, I guess, some medium-term marks as well, because as we're approaching these highs, we're looking at breaking into new territory that we haven't been to since basically back here, which is the beginning of May. So you've got to understand that for the market to really start to push up, that's a pretty big deal. So what's likely to happen, you can see it's happened beforehand as well, it can get a bit of a bounce. So you can expect some sellers on days like today. So it's a one to just gauge and go along with. Don't just expect that the buyers are going to have it all their own way. Of course, we're in a buyer's market, but use something to gauge as to what the current sentiment of the market is. I think for myself, a great tool is the 15-minute chart, and what I've got here is it's squashed down. This is the particular day we just looked at here, previous day, and so you can see that what we can see is about 2 weeks of 10 or so days of information there. We've got the significant trend line that the market keeps on hitting and bouncing off, and kind of been using it as a gauge of recent times, just in these recent markets. So you can see this particular day we kept on bouncing above it, so it's more of a up day as far as the medium term is concerned. This one here we got underneath it, and for a while there we're certainly in a seller's market. This one here today, if I zoom in a little bit closer, we got underneath at one stage, we got back above it, we got underneath it, so I was watching that all day long, just getting a bit of a gauge for what these markets want to do, and it certainly wasn't holding above this line really well, suggesting that it was going to break through and go and make higher highs. So for that reason, did expect both sellers and buyers to come in and have a bit of a go of it, but certainly not a day where it's just going to be all the buyers sort of day, that's for sure. So just to go through this 5-minute chart, start off with here, we had quite a bit of a sideways market. It doesn't particularly show up really well. The 1-minute chart shows a bit better. It dealt quite sideways. We pushed up sideways. This is a fake move to the upside. Again, you've got to be careful that it's not just going to go storming up and break these highs. If it's going to go up, it's likely to go up with some sort of caution. So the upside, I wasn't so sure. Watching the upside, all the other markets weren't really pushing like they wanted to go there. There wasn't this real direction like they were ready to go. Then all of a sudden everything switched to the downside and they started breaking down through some of these levels through here. So that's when the first move of the day really started to become predictable. We pushed down, we bounced back up towards the bottom of this range, and then pushed lower again. And the 1-minute chart will show that area a little bit closer. And then it's around these areas here, especially as we start bouncing up like this. It's what's really handy to have some key levels in the marketplace. So key levels are just support and resistance lines, trend lines, just some things based on really basic trading, which is price action. And at the end of the day, people can be looking at all sorts of different things: PowerPoints, predictive averages, moving averages. Everyone looks at their own sort of thing, but you can be guaranteed that everyone's looking at support and resistance. It's something that's very universal and common to every trader. So for that reason, it's something that you can really use to gauge what this market's doing. Now, an area that kept on playing an influence on the market and time after time was this 13.70.50. It was sort of like a middle line straight through the middle of the market. So when we're above it, it was certainly buying opportunities. When we're below it, looking for selling opportunities. So we bounced up above this area, and this area is, even before we started bouncing off it through here, it's already, if you go back through the market, it's already an area that you can see that the market has respected it and bounced up and bounced down off, going back through the days. So this particular here, also from pushing down, we've got this trend that really started to push up, and we started breaking up through this 13.70 area. So when it starts coming back and bouncing off this level here, this is where it's likely to get a move to the upside. I like it more here the first time. Came back a second time. You've got to be careful when it comes back a second time, but then it's gone to the upside. So for example, this 5-minute, probably a 5-minute fade, although it's a bit of a hard one if you're looking purely at the indicators, that the moving average is very sideways. But based on price action, the area was certainly in a buying area. Okay, it's above that halfway, or that line that we're really watching, and an area where buyers are in control. But just taking it here, you just got to be careful of. As you can see, it's come down, tested that line again, which would have stopped that area, and then it's gone. So just with these sort of indicators and with this sort of trading, it's always wise, I suppose, to have some sort of price action involved, and where you use support, resistance, trend lines, and things like that. And at the end of the day, something like that can be easily learned. You just apply yourself and practice doing it every day. You'll get better at it. There's abundance of information on the internet as well, and you can certainly go from a place where, if you don't know a lot about support, resistance, and trend lines, to in a couple of weeks, knowing a fair bit about it and really using it to your advantage. From there, we dealt a little bit sideways, and again, the 1 minute chart. I'll go through something I want to show in the 1 minute chart, but it's an area where price action again was starting to push to the upside, and we got some real thrust and movement up here, and it came back, and then it went higher again. But I'll talk about that particular area on the 1 minute chart. This high, basically this 3-4 month high. So of course there wasn't the market just didn't blast through it. It's had a look at it, and that's basically the top of the market, like we said on the daily charts. It's going to be hard for it just to get through it and go straight through it. There's likely to get some sort of bounce off it, and that's exactly what happened. But until we get below this 30 70 50 line, I'd still consider this a seller's market. Sorry, a buyer's market. So from there, we've popped up here. We've started pushing low. If you have a look at it, it's a bit of a head and shoulders formation. You see we've come up higher, come down, and now all of a sudden, from making higher highs, we're coming down and making lower highs. Okay, and all this direction starts to form on the downside. Now, yes, we're coming back to this 13, 70, 50 area, but at this stage, it's starting to look a little bit different. It's what we've done here is created quite a significant pivot. This is an area where the market tried to go up from. Okay, if an market goes up from there and comes back and fails on the upside, normally it's going to break that pivot and then push straight through it. It's a bit of a reversal or a change in sentiment or a change in direction, and it's an area that it's quite predictable. So what happened is it's pushed through it and broken through, and then we've got a real roll on the downside, and that pressure's breaking that area, and you're going to see at least a couple of point move, and it's come back and had a look at these cash market lows. And from there, again, it's changed around, and then we kind of really dealt around this 13, 70, 50 area again. We bounced off it, got it back above it, got underneath it temporarily, but then you can see it's eventually held it up, and that's where the market's kind of finished very sideways, but ended up pushing higher. So look at this a little bit closer on the 1 minute chart. So here's this sideways area here. We've come down. Look where this market's basically come back to and push lower. It's 13, 70, 50. So already this area becoming significant in the marketplace. But regardless of that level, when you see a push like this in all the markets, what you want to see is all the markets going. So on the upside here, there wasn't real confluency, or the markets went together and all going with the same direction. It was a bit all over the place, but then they all came down together on the same side. We started breaking through these lows here. So it's going to pop back into the range and then likely go lower again. That's quite a predictable move. From there, we've hit this power point, and this is one that, based on the day's action, because the buyers are around, it's one that I guess could have started head back up, and I guess where it could have found some support at this little level here and gone higher. But then again, there's a lot of reason to sell it as well. There's resistance there as well. So it's one just to be careful with and look at as closely as you can in regards to price action. From there, this is where we've bounced and basically set ourselves to go higher from. So we started to get this uptrend and a real push and some thrust up through here, and we got through this 13, 70, 50 level with quite some ease. So then it comes back, tests it, and looks to go higher. Tests it, looks to go higher again. It's this area here that had, when you look back through a little bit of an area like this, again for myself, I'm looking for a price that's quite common to the area. So I think about 1372.50, this particular area, we've topped out there, come down, tested it, bounced off it, come up, pushed down off it there, and then we've pushed through it. So once we get that thrust through it and then come back and then bounce off it and then push higher, so we're looking, that's a real price pattern as far as holding upside and going higher. But there's a common thread through that whole area of about 72.50. Again, it's interesting stuff. Not all traders use it. You might place more emphasis on indicators, might place more emphasis on price action. I think a little bit of both and understanding of both is certainly beneficial. But then from here we've gone higher. we got to these cash market highs and these monthly highs, and this is where they started the turnaround. So this area here, this is where we started to really get some sort of selling formation. This is where the head and shoulders started to form. We're breaking down and pushing through some of these levels here that we originally went from. So notice how the market, this is where they launched themselves from the upside. Now we've broken through that level, so that's a real downward pressure move there. We popped up, formed a bit of a shoulder, then gone again. So this sort of power fade here is one that quite often work really well. Or if you get some real pressure, look for it to pop back and maybe some sort of power point, which it hasn't got to, but some sort of little bit of a pullback, back to the bottom of the range, or maybe within the range a bit, and then sell off. And it's from there it's driven down through that power point and gone a couple of points past that, and there's certainly some downward pressure there. Then we started to get back up and deal around this 1370.50 area again. So we bounced down down from it, we went pushed back up through it. You can see the market's really reacting to it and really sticking within a channel, so it looks very sideways, but within this sideways channel there's definitely some predictable moves, and it's staying true to itself by respecting these levels. And while it's above the level, it's holding up until it gets down and really pushes down solidly, like this area here. I believe this is an area to sell from, because you can see 1370.50, we're trying to bounce off, and then all of a sudden this real push down through here, and it's broken that area really well. So look for it to maybe even continue a little bit, but come back and hold off that level and go lower. So that's an area that will normally quite work. In this particular case it hasn't, but if you're looking at particular price action and seeing this battle between the buyers and sellers, there was certainly some momentum there to believe that these sellers were coming, but in the end the sideways channel ended up continuing on, and they popped up a little bit higher. So anyway, a lot to think about there. You can certainly get creative with trading. You never have to be contained within the box of one sort of thinking. There's many things to look at, but what I'd suggest with any sort of trading plan is just be very true to yourself as to how you want to approach trading. There's many different ways and many different approaches and many different opinions. And what I talk about today might not necessarily resonate with all top traders, but the thing is, what's going to create some problems if you're uncertain and you kind of got all these influences affecting you. So you want to take something, really run with it and develop it and create some perimeters around that, and that's the key to really trying to get ahead and get some consistency and some momentum. So that's a wrap up, guys, for Thursday, and we'll speak to you guys on Friday.